Cathy. Okay, got it. All right. Cathy, we're really happy that you could take this time out of your very busy schedule. And we just learned something about Linda Matthews. Linda, why don't you explain what you mentioned to us?
Good morning, Cathy. It's nice to meet you. I was one of the first employees hired by the Cattaraugus County Department for the Aging. It had just started up and Kathleen Horner was the director.
Oh, yeah.
She had an office down in the nursing home. And she hired 5 outreach workers. We were part-time, 15 hours a week. And our job was to go door to door and talk to people about the Department for the Aging. And so there were different areas for each of the 5. One person, the gentleman, had the city of Olean. I had the town of Olean and up into Hinsdale. And we went door to door, and it was really interesting, and tried to explain to people what the department could offer to them and encourage them to call us if they had any problems. And then I went on to become, that was part-time, I went on to become the coordinator of services, which at the time was the assistant director position, and I oversaw the INR program that they had. And then I wrote the Appalachian Regional Grant that started the Linwood Center. Nice. And then I had a kid, so then I left.
Yeah. Now, was Jack Searles or Sherry Ann, were they on board yet at that time?
Jack came on, Sherry Ann was not, but Jack came on. Yeah, he came on after me. Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah.
So I've known him.
And then Jack became the director, and then Sherry Ann became the director, and now I'm the director. But
yes.
So I could just turn my time over to you, Linda, then, and you could just.
No, I think things have changed quite a bit over the many years. That was about 44 years ago, because my daughter is 47. She was 2, so that's 45 years ago. And I worked there for several years and loved it, absolutely loved it. Only left because another child. So.
Yeah, it's the kind of department where I just have to say the staff is amazing. You know, maybe we've just been very good at vetting people as well. I don't know, but you typically don't work in the Department of Aging unless you are extremely compassionate and really have that heart for service. So, and I just have to say the staff is absolutely amazing. They make us look good all the time, and they're just, I can't say enough about them. They're great. And they stay a long time. You know, I've been here for 25 years. You know, I started off as home delivered meal coordinator. I was a caseworker. I was a unit supervisor, and coordinator of services, and now the director. And, you know, sometimes I long for those days of being a case manager again, because my days now are just filled with emails and meetings and contracts and budgets and, you know, stuff like that. But I'll still go over and do a visit at Linwood, or go do a visit somewhere else. Or I've actually started to teach the AMP classes myself, so that I have more time out in the community with seniors. And we'll come back to that, because AMP was not a thing we had. And oh my gosh, I would hate to have to go door to door now, because we already have thousands and thousands of people to try to help. And there's just, you know, more people every day with the baby boomers, and and less stuff to do with. But yeah, when the Department of Aging began, we began because of the Older Americans Act. And the Older Americans Act came out in 65, and the funding that came with it, all the Title III fundings. And those fundings were supposed to be fundings that would help people remain independent and in their own homes for as long as possible, and to be able to have some choice over options and how they wanted to live their lives in their so-called golden years. And so a lot of it was benefit oriented at the time. So, you know, the thought was a lot of people maybe have less to live on now than they did before. They've retired, they have their Social Security, maybe a small pension if they're lucky, and maybe they've saved a little bit. But, you know, really, even if you save, especially nowadays, even if you've saved quite a bit, it's very difficult if you should ever need a long-term care facility to pay for that for any length of time on your own. You know, people may have enough saved to pay for a while. And most people don't have long-term care insurance because that's also very expensive. But so back in the day, and actually in the nursing home where we started, that's also where we started Meals on Wheels. So back in the day, they were helping a lot with benefit programs, things like HEAP, health insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, which are now called SNAP, and Meals on Wheels. Then they opened some congregate sites where people could come together and have lunch. And it was mostly a nutrition program. Those sites are now also evolving. While we still have all of those kinds of services, they've all evolved. And I'll tell you how that's evolved. I don't know how many staff you had, Linda, at the very beginning, but we have, this is pretty pathetic that I don't know for sure, but I want to say around 70 something, 70 staff.
We had Cathy Horner, the 5 of us who were the part-timers, and then that evolved. We had a Vista worker who was on a contract annually. And then we got one more lady that we were able to bring on through Voc Rehab because she was blind, legally blind. And we had to get her a machine so she could have a Kurzweil reader. And that was it. We were it. We were the whole staff.
Yeah.
So it has changed. Yeah.
Oh, it certainly has. And a lot of that staff, you know, because we still do our own meals, but we are housed out of the Machias Pines. We do the nutrition program, the dietary program for the Pines as well. So our only in Machias, not in Olean, they contract out for their meals. So our kitchen is probably half of our staff. Also because we put out over 1,000 Meals on Wheels a day. And we also have congregate site meals. We do meals for the foundation day programmings. That's a mental health program through community services. We do meals for PACE for the folks going through that program who may need meals to take home. We work with Healthy Community Alliance in Gowanda, in the Gowanda area, and do meals also for all of the social assistance day programs like Linwood. But there's also PACE. There's now Total Senior Care, which is PACE, but they have a social day model in case you're not on Medicaid, which is called Daybreak. And one thing I think is good to know is the Department of Aging is not like other human service agencies in that we aren't here to help folks necessarily who have Medicaid. Most of the folks that we work with have Medicare, which you typically get when you turn 65 and you're looking at retiring. Medicaid, you usually have if you're a lower income. Most people with Medicaid, their income isn't much more than 800 and something a month. Now, if they have Medicaid, they can still call us. You talked about your INA, your Information and Assistance Service. That has grown to what is now called New York Connects. And you might have seen it somewhere. It's NY Connects. And so back in the day, a person might walk into our office and want to know, you know, my furnace is broken. Do you have funding for it? You know, we talk about whether they're eligible for HEAP. And if they're not eligible for HEAP, then we talk about other things that we might be able to help them with. Now, if someone walks into our office and says, I have a special needs child and I'm looking for a day program, or I have to fill out some applications for Head Start, things like that we do. You would never think those types of things would come through the Department of Aging, but they do because they're part of New York Connects. So we help with those things, or we at least connect people to the places that they would need to go so that they don't have to keep repeating themselves and make 10 different phone calls. We try to do a warm transfer, hand them off to that person that that can really help them. So we do that. Now I talked about the benefit programs, which we certainly help people with, though. You know, we help them apply for HEAP. We help them, you know, if they need the air conditioning or the heat furnace repair and replacement. We help them with SNAP and those types of things. But we help with a lot of other things that we may not have helped with before. Our goal is to help Cattaraugus County be more accessible and livable, so that you can retire here comfortably. So we might help people who need to make a small home modification. Maybe they're fine at home, but they just need their washer and dryer upstairs. Maybe they just need a person to come in once a week to do a few things. Maybe they just need a lift chair. Maybe they need, we've done a lot this year, especially with COVID, with helping people with iPads, giving them iPads or grandpads or computers, helping them learn the basic technology so that they could doctor from home. We've given them pulse oximeters, blood pressure cuffs, things like that, so that they can meet their physician without having to leave their home. We've helped with, you know, it used to be just kind of people would think they'd call us if they needed a walker or a shower tub chair. And we do those things, but we've just come so far from that. We have so much technology that we help people with. We have some folks who their spouse has some dementia, but they want to be out gardening outside for quite a while, and we'll help them with a nanny cam. And that's something that they can still see their loved one in the house. They can talk to them, you know, but maybe they're outside or in the garage or something, and they feel a little bit safer because they're making sure that they're not getting up out of their chair or falling or whatever. Maybe they even run to the store quickly or whatever. There's a lot of different things in technology now, and really we could have a whole separate meeting just on technology, and Bonnie would be the person to do that because she does all that. I'll tell you, during COVID, we had one gentleman who was pretty much homebound to his upstairs level, and his family, he really didn't have any informal support system. His family would come and help, but this was back when everything was closed down, and we got a special stair lift built for him, and he didn't have the straight stairs. He had a, you know, kind of a curved one, and those are a little bit more difficult, but I'm telling you, he zips up and down in that stair now, in that chair on his stairs now, so that he can also be downstairs, and that's really nice. We've helped people with a lot of motor scooters, or whatever you call those things, scooters, around to get around the Olean, to go shopping, things like that. I know I'm leaving a lot out. Again, I'm the director, so I know enough to be dangerous because I don't do all this stuff all the time. But we also help folks who, interestingly enough, think that they wouldn't come to us because maybe they're well off, they've got everything planned, they just don't think there's anything they need. But it's not all, most of our programs are not based on income. Certainly some are, like HEAP or food stamps, but we have a lot of health benefit programs. So we do Tai Chi for arthritis. I mentioned that AMP program that I like to do. it's Aging Mastery Program, AMP, and it's like a 10-week evidence-based program on how to live your best life as you're aging, how to master aging, so to speak. And I've taught one of those classes in Olean, no, two in Olean, one in Allegheny. I do different parts of the county, and a lot of times that program has guest speakers. So we've had financial planners, attorneys, nutritionists, pharmacists come in on the different weeks, depending on what it is that we're talking about. And you know, really, there's not much I can teach someone who's a senior citizen. You know, you have life experience, and you really, honestly, already know the kind of stuff we're talking about. But if anything, it just kind of gives you motivation, maybe, to look at your day-to-day priorities or your habits or whatever. It's not like we're teaching you anything that you don't really already know. But it's a fun program. It's you know, people participate. They have all of their stuff that they get with it, their books and everything. And we have a lot of fun. There's door prizes and food, and you know, of course, there's always food to make everything fun. But in this year, I'm actually going to be starting a new program called Age-tastic, and it's actually like a game. So I haven't learned much about it. It is also evidence-based. So I'm going to be going to the training to be certified to do Age-tastic, but I want to start doing that. That is also a health and wellness program. And I think it's a lot like AMP, but it's different because it's focused around a game. It's probably kind of like when you get together once a week for game night or something. It would probably be something like that. We, you know, obviously still work with other organizations too. So maybe we aren't doing Better Balance, but maybe Ardent Solutions is. And so we give them money, and then they come and plan a class maybe in the Olean area instead of Cuba. So we can do things like that as well. We have health insurance counselors, and I'm telling you, they are probably the two most important people in the office. Health insurance counseling, even 10 years ago, was so much simpler than it is now. People come in, they've actually made an entire matrix so that it's not just when a person turns 65 and they suddenly need to know about, okay, what do I have to get with Medicare? What don't I have to get? What are the penalties? What, you know, what's this going to cost me? Can I get Part B paid for depending on my income, that kind of thing. But even just looking at your supplemental insurances, they've made an entire matrix for our area that shows, okay, these are the different insurance carriers. Here's what it'll cost for each one of them. Here's the pros, here's the cons. And they'll meet with people, talk to you about what meds you're on, what your real needs are. And it's nice to know those things because, for instance, a couple of the local carriers that we have do not, Roswell does not take that insurance. So if you were currently using Roswell for something, you know, that would be important to know. There was one that Olean General Hospital wasn't taking up until 2 years ago, and people didn't know that. And then they'd go in and get this horrific bill for the emergency room, and we would have to have our attorney try to assist them in getting that taken care of. Oh yeah, we have an attorney as well. We work with the Center for Elder Law and Justice out of Buffalo. And once a month, an attorney comes down here and talks to people about whatever they might need. This attorney will also go to a nursing home or go to a person's personal home if they're homebound and they can't get here to the office. But it's nicer than having you have to drive all the way to Buffalo, so they come into Olean. The attorney helps people with a lot of different things, not necessarily any kinds of, the attorney doesn't help with criminal cases, obviously. You would need a criminal, that would go through a different kind of court. They would help with things like, say you have a spouse that you think is going to need to be going into a nursing home soon, and you are looking at how to protect as many of your assets as you can. They would talk to you about spousal Medicaid and that 5-year look back and pooled trusts. And they would talk to you about, financial and long-term care planning. They help folks with wills and healthcare proxies, things like that. They also help with landlord, tenant disputes. There's so many different things. If, like I said, if you have a health insurance issue, if you have any type of issue, especially where you feel like you are getting financially abused or harassed or somehow, especially because of your age. So you go to get your car taken somewhere to be fixed and they're being funky with you. I'm trying to think of all the examples. And Mandy does that. So again, we might need another meeting where you talk to the people that actually do this from day to day, because they might be able to give you some better examples. But so there's the attorney as well. We help people with weatherization kinds of things. Sometimes we'll help them try to replace a hot water tank. We work with other people, obviously. The Bridge is an amazing place. And in fact, we are giving them our Star Award this year because they, during COVID, just stepped up so much to help us and others in the, I haven't told them they're getting that award. Don't tell anyone if you know anyone that works at the Bridge. Please don't tell them that they're getting that award this year. But so we work very closely with Directions in Independent Living, other healthcare entities. Certainly we work closely with the health department as well and the other agencies here within the county, but we work with a faith-based community. We work with interfaith caregivers, just anything that we can do to try to work as a team and meet the needs of the community. Oh gosh, what else do we do? So, we help folks with, I was starting to talk about weatherization. So maybe people have issues with, I don't know, maybe they need a ramp, maybe they have a leak in a room or something like that. So they can call us about stuff like that. Either we will have funding, we'll try to find funding. Worst case, if it's something that's really too big of a job, we can help them look at the USDA applications for a grant or a very low interest loan. We have our Caregiver Resource Center. 2 of our case managers are caregiver counselors, and they concentrate specifically on caregiver issues, with or without dementia, whatever that caregiving issue might be. And there is a lot of different services for that. There's caregiver education and programs. We have, we try to help with home health aides. We try to help with respite. We had a couple the other day that we assisted them with having their loved one go into Tanglewood. Well, wait, what's the one here in Allegheny called? You
mean the assisted living?
Yeah.
The new one.
In
The
Allegheny.
new one, that's, in Allegheny. Yeah.
Anyway, I know it's part of Tanglewood, which is in Jamestown, but they also, with us, they'll do like a respite room. So maybe you're not actually at the assisted living level yet, but because you live with your family, but your daughter and her husband need a vacation. So, we'll help fund them to go maybe to a place like that for respite for a couple weeks. So there's a lot of different support services. We work with elder abuse and fraud and scams. We just had the senator here to present on some new initiatives they're doing. And we work closely with the DA's office, the sheriff's office, and the attorney, obviously. We do non-medical home care. I'm sure you all know that there is a home care crisis, just like there's a crisis in almost every business right now. We can't find people that, want to work, or we can't find enough people in the workforce. And home health aides are no different. And in fact, they've been experiencing this long before COVID, because quite frankly, it's criminal, the small amount of money they make for the job that they do. And they're caring for some of the most important people in your lives. We were contracting with Will Care, and they're no longer taking any new referrals because they also cannot find enough help. And most of the time, those folks get paid minimum wage, which around here is still 12 something, I think. And they don't even get mileage reimbursement. So I went to the legislature, and we had some extra money through one of our state fundings called Unmet Needs. We got that we're going to be getting over the next few years. So we were allowed, right now, I have hired 3 full-time and 1 substitute personal care assistants in the Department of Aging. So now we have, those PCAs can do our home care for us. Now they're not medical, so those would still come through the health department if they had anyone. These PCAs are like home health aides. So they can help people with bathing, transferring, eating, all of the things that you would need for personal care, but they can also help people with just running their errands, doing housekeeper chore stuff, cleaning, running the sweeper, doing their laundry, those types of things as well, getting their groceries. I think I said that. But it is really hard to find those workers. So for the legislature to let us hire them internally as county workers was huge. But that tells you just how hard it is to find that help right now. So us hiring them, we're able to offer them mileage, and I want to say they make $17.75 an hour to start or something like that. So, it's an incentive over, maybe what they were doing outside of the community. And the great part is quality control and monitoring is wonderful because they are our employees. So once a week they're in the office, we're talking about the folks. We have an RN on staff here, and our nurse goes out and does the nursing supervision for our PCAs. So they're our employees, so we know how much they care, and they can come back and say, hey, Mrs. Miller, it looks like she's really starting to need such and such. And they know all of the other things that we do. So there's that collaborative effort and connection to other services and a much better quality of service. I'm hoping that in 2022, our Older Americans Act gets reauthorized every, I don't know if it's 4 years, but this coming year, they're looking at more than just reauthorizing it. They're looking at revamping it, changing some of the basic language of the Older Americans Act and increasing what they say they do with it, the people that they serve, and therefore the funding. I will tell you, the Older Americans Act, that's our federal funding, that hasn't grown in the entire time I've been here. Maybe just a little COLA every year, but it's pretty much stayed the same. So every time that we add services and fundings, it's coming from the state, or it's coming from the local, or it's grants that I've gone out and applied for. So for the Older Americans Act monies to increase is huge. It's already passed through the House. It was in the president's budget, but it's already passed through. It really needed to be done because of the number of folks that are turning 60 and over every day, but it also needed to be done because of the way that we deliver services and how much that's changed over the past 30 years. So we're really excited about that, and I'm hoping that those increases, we will also hire some more personal care aides. And of course, when we hire more personal care aides, we need more case managers then to follow all of these cases. And right now I have 7 case managers. So I'm looking at adding a case manager, but also we have a licensed clinical social worker on staff who comes from mental health field. And what I am looking at is also having housed within the Department of Aging a mental health therapist social worker. We know that there's a lot of actual mental health services out there. Typically, those services are tied to other programs, maybe CARES, maybe alcohol and drug related programs. But people forget that if you were an alcoholic when you were younger, it doesn't mean that when you're a senior citizen, that's necessarily gone away. But also, there's other things, mental health issues that are common to senior citizens just because of the fact that we're older. There is that depression sometimes when mortality is staring you in the face, when you can't do maybe everything that you did years ago, when a lot of your loved ones have passed away, when you're a caregiver, and that's very, very stressful. When you have a loved one that's going through some challenges. And, you know, then you put COVID in the mix, and it's just been a rough couple of years. It's like we've all felt kind of like we've lost 2 years of our lives. And we've always addressed those types of situations, but we've never had the actual mental health therapist here on staff. The one that we have now does case management, and we will often send her out on the harder crisis calls that we get. Maybe an animal hoarder, maybe a gentleman that's been living in his car and we didn't know it. You know, there's all kinds of things that if I really wanted to get detailed, I could tell you all kinds of things, but I won't. But we have a lot of things that we deal with. And because we come from a place, aging comes from a place of giving you options and supporting your decisions so that it's person-centered. Those decisions you make for yourself may not be the best decisions in the world, but as long as you're competent, we need to be there just to help you make the decisions that you want to make as safely as possible. And I'm hoping that having the mental health therapist full-time on staff will also help with those things. Gosh, what else? I just have to think. We do so much, you know. I go places and people think, oh, Department of Aging. What do you do at a Department of Aging? You know, help old people, you know, go to a nursing home, you know, or maybe they know a little bit about us and they think we just play bingo and have picnics or, you know, whatever. Not that we don't. We do have, we do still have nutrition sites, and like I said, originally nutrition sites, congregate dining sites were a way for folks to come together, have lunch with some of their friends, have a healthy meal, socialize a little bit. Even those sites have changed quite a bit. Some have grown, many have decreased in participation because the younger baby boomers are, you know, still working, or they're out, you know, going to Tim Hortons with their friends, or they're, you know, doing whatever they're doing. They might think that, oh, those senior sites, that's for old people. You know, I've heard, you know, we have a gentleman, he's the funniest guy. He's part of Allegheny 60 Plus, but he just turned 90 this year. And he's like, yeah, no, I don't like going to that. That's for old people. He's so cute. But even those have changed. So we'll have outreach at those places, and we'll have some of those programs that we've talked about, like AMP. They do their Wii bowling, and, you know, they do some other, you know, fun activities there. So it's not, you know, I don't even actually know how many people do bingo regularly like they used to. There's a lot of different things they do now. We have, though, it was actually this year, we were going to start a dine out program in place of congregate dining. And then COVID hit, and we are now looking at trying to do our first 1 or 2 places and seeing how they go in 2022, hopefully, knock on wood. The Dine Out program would be an option where people would still be able to use the Older Americans Act nutrition funding, but go to a local restaurant. So what we would do is we would contract with a couple of restaurants. We'd pick one or two in each different area that we're doing. And we would work with that restaurant and they would have a little mini menu. So it would kind of look like, when you go into the Beef and Barrel and they show you the little, specials of the day. It would be a mini menu if you were coming in there for an aging congregate meal. And you'd have, either your voucher, or we'd have a card or something that you'd show them that you're there for aging. And then they'd give you this mini menu. So it would have a couple of options for your lunch, because we still have to meet the recommended the allowance of daily nutrients, blah, blah. But this way you can go to the restaurants you like. If you get something above and beyond that, then you would pay separately for that if you wanted to, but they would have a couple of options on there. And you also could go when you wanted too. So you wouldn't necessarily have to go at the only time that congregate dining site was being held. They're doing this already in other counties. It started mostly in urban counties, of course, because there's more restaurants, but Chautauqua County has started it, and it just gives you another option. And so we are really excited about doing the Dine Out program as well. And once we get that going, I'm sure we'll have some media out there, and you'll be able to either check it out on our Facebook page or read it in the paper or whatever. So we're excited about that. And again, that's something that we didn't do before. I'm going to check the chat here because I saw a couple questions come up. What have you found to be the greatest need of older folks in our county? Honestly, the needs are transportation obviously is always an issue. And in fact, I should tell you that here's a crime. We get about $6,000 a year for transportation in the Department of Aging from our funding, our state and federal funding. Is that insane? I get, a couple $100,000 for other things. We're a rural county where there's like hardly any transportation and we get $6,000. That's just your FYI moments. But anyway, what we have done a lot in the past with our transportation was we would transport people to these nutrition sites. And then the money kept decreasing, and pretty much we would have a van that would take people to maybe the Olean Senior Center for lunch. Maybe it would take people to Tops once a week, once a month. But it all went away. Now, what I have done is, and by the way, we'd have a transportation contract with the person that would take them, but then we'd have a contract with the transportation manager. This is how much transportation has changed. When you contract for transportation, all of these transportation companies have a transportation manager now. So for instance, during COVID, when everything was closed, and none of my programs were running anyway, so I didn't need a van to take someone to the senior center for lunch or whatever. We were still paying hundreds of dollars every month for the transportation manager, because regardless of whether or not the transportation was going on, they had to manage these programs. So I talked to Jack and the legislature and said, look, I hardly get any transportation money. I feel like it's getting wasted. What I would like to do instead is get out of that contract and purchase Oats bus passes for people, purchase taxi rides for people, work with ROC. ROC stands, oh gosh, what does it stand for? Rural Outreach something. They're up in East Aurora, but they come down that Route 16 corridor into Olean. That's a place in the county that hardly gets any transportation assistance at all. If you live up in Franklinville, Machias area, there's not a lot of transportation. So I'm just thinking of different ways that I can use the transportation money and help more people. So there's another thing that we're looking at changing. So I guess I would say the answer to your question would be transportation and social isolation. And I'm not just saying that because of COVID. That was a huge thing before COVID. We're rural, rural communities, either you have neighbors that you can count on, or if you don't, you really don't have a social network. It's not like we're 20 something and we go out to the bar to find friends. Well, maybe you do, I don't know. But especially if you're older and your whole life is concentrated around your spouse and your kids, and now your kids live far away or your spouse has passed away, it's difficult to get out there and find a new social network. That is why I love, by the way, the idea of the village movement. It's an amazing, amazing thing, and we've seen it work so well in other areas. So I would say social isolation, because that's something that affects everyone across all the, regardless of income, regardless of race, that's something that affects everyone. Let's see. Once you give iPads to individuals, is there someone to teach them to use them? Yes. We were actually trying to help people ourselves, but now that we work with Healthy Community Alliance, they're actually going to have coaches coaching how to use the new technology. So, which will really help us, because like I said, even though we have a lot more staff than we had 30 years ago, it's difficult to take a lot of that time. So Healthy Community Alliance has IT coaches. So yes. Let's see. And I saw another one. If a person needs a new roof, can you help? That one is interesting. It depends. Isn't that a horrible question? I sound like an attorney. It depends. If we work with, gosh, I'm trying to think of all the different, see, now I need Larry on the call because he does most of our home repair. He helps us with most of those things. Roofs are probably one of the hardest things to meet, only because other home repairs, if people don't have to get up on a roof, it's a huge insurance thing is what it is a lot of times. So we can help people with other kinds of home repairs much easier. Whether we're doing it with a contracted individual that we are paying for the cost or part of the cost, or whether it's volunteers. I'm sure you know that Bonner Responds does all kinds of things to help people with housing issues. The folks at Community Action will work with us, and I sit on their board as well. But when you're doing roofing, and I don't think Bonner Responds will do that either. When you're doing roofing, it does take that extra insurance, which oftentimes means that we can't help. Now, if it's not a whole new, say, $15,000 roof or whatever, if we're looking at patching, sometimes we can find a local contractor that we can do a short-term contract with, and we might be able to help with that type of a roof repair. So really, it's an individual. It's based on an individual basis of what's actually going on. Worst case, we can say here's Rural Revitalization helped us one time, but they don't typically do roofs either. And I think it was actually one of those things where, because they were helping with some other home projects, somebody got up there and did that, made a little repair, but I don't think they typically do. But anyway, worst case, we can steer you in the direction of low interest loans. But what services are income based? Income-based services would be, well, obviously eligibility programs, whether or not you can get HEAP or SNAP, those are based on income. Caregiver services are not. Case management is not. Home care is not. We do have a home care program called ISEP, Expanded In-Home Services for the Elderly, where we can help you get, you know, a beeper, a home health aid, respite, those types of things. Maybe some other ancillary services, maybe some adaptive equipment that we talked about. ISEP is typically based on income. However, we have an ISEP-like funding called unmet needs, and that is not based on income. So if I'm talking to a person and really I'm seeing that it's more of a hardship for them because even though they have a high income, they have a lot of things that they need to use that income for, or this is really very, it's not even the money, it's more of an urgent need and it's very stressful or whatever, then I'll use the unmet needs money. So I guess the answer is most of our things are not income based. Those that are typically programs where it's beyond our control. You know, so maybe it's you know, something that ultimately goes through Department of Social Services. Yeah, you know, that's a really good question, Athena. I will tell you something funny that just happened this last week. So whenever we get new legislators in, I present to them my annual report, which shows everything. You know, it talks about all the services we do. It talks about all the funding. It talks about all of our challenges. It talks about all the bright spots and new things we did. That's what I should have gotten out my annual report, and that would help remind me to tell you about things that I just aren't coming up right now. But yeah, the funny thing is I can walk people through my office, kind of tell them about things. And until you need something, a lot of times it's just, you just don't know all the stuff that we do. I was in a legislative meeting last Wednesday. 2 of the legislators in the past 2 weeks have needed our assistance for a family member. When I was in the legislative meeting last week, one of them stood up to say, I had no idea what the Department of Aging does. And I am ashamed. You know, because the legislators are basically my bosses, whatever. And said that this worker that went there and went through absolutely everything with them and did a compass assessment, and he was floored. And then there was a gentleman across the room, the other one who we also helped a few weeks ago or last month, who said, I got to say the same thing. So I don't know, you know, part of me wants to remain the best kept secret in Cat County because there's way too many seniors to help. And then I would have to say no to so many people because we didn't have enough people or enough funding. But the other part of me, really, I want people to know that we aren't just that one trick pony that they think we might be, where we're having picnics and, you know, we deliver Meals on Wheels. Although Meals on Wheels, that is a great way to kind of get people to know about us at all, because maybe they've never heard of the Department of Aging, or maybe they, you know, even the name I don't like, but it's all over the state and the country. For me to get rid of a, you know, area agency on aging would not be an easy thing to do. And even, even just changing the name, I think would be able to help. But because people don't want to think about aging, especially when they're younger. You know, it's funny. I did a workshop one time, and well, it was actually just a talk, but we talked about how younger people, once you get to be older, it's almost like you become invisible sometimes. People just do not see you anymore. And if they do see you, they see you as that old man over there. They don't see you as a person with a history of life and years of life to go, of a husband, a wife, a mother, a lover, a person that has traveled, a person that likes to play video games, a person that, you know, whatever, they just see you as an old person and you kind of fade into the background. And that's a sad thing. And so I think a lot of the things that we do in the Department of Aging now are those types of things to try to tell you that whether or not you have a year or 20 years left, you can live that to the fullest. And we want to try to help you to be able to do that. But to answer your question, I don't know. You know, we've gotten things on Facebook. We've got a website. You know, we put things in the paper. Not many people see papers anymore, but I think it's just kind of, Althea, that thing where until you need it, you don't really know it's there anyway. It's kind of like when you walk by a bulletin board and there's something hanging there and you walk by it every single day, you start not seeing what's on the bulletin board anymore because you're just not looking for it until you look for it because you need it.
Yeah. Can I say something?
Sure. I think
One
I've
of
said
the
enough anyway.
things, and I think we can, if you're muted, you can unmute. One of the things I think would be helpful, and maybe it's being done, there's a wealth of experience and knowledge among older adults. I mean, even the people in our village, we have educators, we have social workers, we have healthcare workers, we have people that are carpenters and so on. If there were, I feel sometimes when you see pictures of older people at a with cutesy hats on and playing games, that they don't realize that while the body may have some limitations, many of their minds are very clear and they have experience. I think we do not use the resources that we have to good effect. I
Right.
think if you had a council of older people, some of our programs, our volunteer programs are actually worked by older
Mhm.
people. You know, I mean,
Oh, yeah. I didn't even bring up RSVP. We have now almost 30 volunteer stations, and they're in, they're not just Meals on Wheels drivers. They're in schools, they're in the library, they're in the hospital, and these are all older folks who come and do an interest inventory with us. And while they may have skills in one area, they might not want to do that because they've done it their whole lives too. So maybe we have someone who is an attorney and could, or maybe we have someone who's been an accountant and can help us do taxes to help folks during tax time, because we have volunteers that do that. But maybe they're sick of doing that and they would rather branch out and go volunteer at the library, you know. And sometimes I think too, we assume that because someone has a background in something, we need to place them there too. Right. So you bring up a good point though. We have a lot of senior volunteers in RSVP in different stations that bring a lot of expertise into those places. So.
Cathy, one thing I'd like to just mention, because it's something my family just recently went through. My sister-in-law had Alzheimer's, and she was a wonderful, wonderful person, a lovely person, but Alzheimer's robbed her of some of that loveliness, and she became delusional. She was a very independent woman. She would not allow any help. Absolutely refused all help. She should no longer be, have been driving, but she kept driving. I cannot tell you, she lived in Schenectady County. I called so many agencies there. I called so many people there. I could not get much help at all. Finally, our local Cattaraugus County deputy sheriff helped me by getting the forms that could be filled out and whatever, which we did. But there are laws that get in the way of trying to help somebody. And every place we went, we ran up against the privacy laws. Yeah. And it was impossible. It was just impossible. And so finally, her daughter and I each filled out one of those forms to get, so that she, would lose her license because we couldn't talk her out of driving. Right. And one of the things, people kept saying, well, just take her keys or just take the car. That's actually called theft. and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
I called Adult Protective Services in Schenectady County, and they said, take the battery out of her car. Well, you know what? She had AAA on speed dial. She did know how to call them.
Yeah, and that, that's not really solving the problem either.
Exactly.
And, we know about that here as well. You can contact a local DMV. There is a form you can fill out,
Right.
where, it's, it's
Well,
it's kind of a last scenario kind of a thing. Cause we don't want
Right.
everybody contacting DMV on everybody else to, say, hey,
But the problem with that form is they will only respond to that person. They won't respond to the person who sent the form. When I sent the form in, I sent my niece's name and address, said she had power of attorney, and said, please, please make sure that whatever you send to Cindy, that you also send to her daughter, because Cindy's not capable of understanding any mail that she gets.
Mhm.
Will simply throw it away.
Mhm.
So they never followed through on that. And finally, we were just absolutely desperate. And I called Senator Borrello's office,
Mhm.
and they looked into it for me. They were wonderful. They looked into it for me, and they said, actually, your sister-in-law has gotten a response. So I sent my niece over there, and under the mountain of paperwork on her mother's table, she did find it. But the reason that they would not honor my request, even though her daughter had the power of attorney, they said, no, it's a privacy issue. We can only respond to the person. Well, Cindy wasn't the one who filed that form. We were the ones who filed the form. We needed to know what the outcome was going to be. So what they did was they gave her an appointment. Her son took her to that appointment. And with very little explanation, they simply told her they were pulling her driver's license, and they had contacted her doctor and all of that. And the whole thing was so traumatic. It was so traumatic. She died 3 weeks later because she was in an absolute frenzy of not being able to understand any of this.
Yeah.
And I called back to thank Senator Borrello's office for what they did and at least getting us information,
Mhm.
but I said, somehow we have to change. I'm all for privacy. I'm all for protecting people's rights. But when you have somebody that's delusional, you've got to have other ways of dealing with it. And the only option we were ever offered was to take her to court, have her declared incompetent. And that is a horrible, horrible process. From
Yep.
working at the Department of the Aging, I know what that process is like.
Oh, it is. And that's what we're
It's
up
a
against.
horrible
We get calls a lot of times from people saying, how can you let so-and-so live like that? It's,
Exactly.
it's a horrible, you walk in the door, there's feces everywhere. And it's
Right.
like, until that person is actually deemed incompetent in a court of law, which is a difficult process.
Right.
Now, having said that, we did do something with that same DMV type of a situation where we had the PCP and I believe the neurologist sign off on it, and they didn't end up bringing her in. They sent her a thing saying, we're not going to renew your license. You would have to take, the exam and blah, blah. Without, I think it was a little less heavy-handed, but I don't know if it's because the doctors sent something in along with someone else.
Well, we did, initially the doctor refused because she didn't want to be involved. But then once we sent the form, the state contacted her and she had to fill out the form.
Okay.
But then they still made my sister-in-law go in for an appointment. She thought she was going for a road test. And then what they said is, your doctor says you can't drive anymore. We're taking your license.
Yeah.
It was just the whole process was so traumatic. And then to even think about putting her through a court hearing and having to prove competency, her children just refused to go along with it. But then that meant we never could get any of the services that she desperately needed. And it was traumatic. The whole thing was just, it was traumatic for her children, for all of us. And I just wonder if there's some way for departments for the aging to advocate with the state to somehow get a better process. That you don't have to go through
We
that.
have tried advocating different levels of competency.
Right.
It is such a difficult push, and I mean, because it's a slippery slope. Where do you then start to infringe on a person's life liberties, and in this day and age, political day and age, it's even more difficult to get anything accomplished at all.
I'd like to butt in here and just say, Cathy, you have given us so much of your experience and your time, and we could go on and on because this is really interesting. I wish that the Department of Aging had a brochure that we couldn't, with all the services that could be mailed, because not everybody has the internet. Not everybody in the mail, just a hard copy, that would be great. And if you needed people,
we have a directory of services.
Yeah.
That's kind of got most everything in it.
If that were mailed, is that mailed to every single person in the county? I think every household, that would be great.
I would love to. They're expensive to make, but we've taken them to places before. Like we took a stack to the Olean Public Library. We've taken stacks to different town and village places. I mean, they're always at senior centers and stuff, but that's like preaching to the choir.
Right.
But we have taken them to other places. We did a full mail out years ago for ProAct. It was that insurance thing where if you had nothing that would cover medications, you could at least call that number. And that was something that actually came from the county in general, but they asked our department to send them all out. So those got sent out to like every household. And I'm talking years ago. And it was, I just remember, a huge, huge cost. Now, if the county were to cover that, because I don't have it in my budget, I think it would be great. But in the meantime, yeah, we take them out. We try to leave them wherever we can. We mail them out anytime we've talked to someone, like a caregiver that lives in another state or whatever. We send that out too, so they have an idea of maybe what they can ask for. But yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Well,
Athena, I wonder if that could some of those be made available to the Enchanted Mountains Village, so that when Athena holds, various, or we hold various activities, we could make those available?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm cognizant of the time and your work and for all of us, and this is recorded, so people who are not in on this can at least listen to it from our village. So I want to thank you, Cathy, for your commitment, your passion for all of us, especially us older folks. And we're glad we're partnering with you. We brought up the Department of Aging during our launch. We had 32 people meet at the Fusion.
I was going to ask you how many. That's awesome.
32 met. There were many that didn't want to go into restaurants, or they were out of town. But it was a wonderful meeting, I think, and we also have that recorded. Jean-Francois did a video recording of it, so I gave a little talk, and so did Kim La Mendola. So that was good. And if you want, we can send you that copy.
Yeah, that'd be good.
On behalf of all of us, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll keep in touch.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.